Okay, welcome back to PT Meal Podcast, a buffet of play, therapies, movement, exercises, activities, and leisure, all packed in a hearty conversation of the physical therapy profession and practice with a Filipino flavor. I am Johann de la Paz, your host. Again, thank you for dropping by and eavesdropping. So, again, if you're new to the podcast, please do subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening from. The podcast is available in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor, our iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many, many more. You can also catch the episodes in YouTube, where you can see our beautiful faces, my guests and mine, and subscribe there as well. And if you want to stay in the loop and new updates, fresh episodes, interview snippets, research abstracts, educational materials, or infographics, follow the podcast's social media accounts in Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. All right. So let's go on with the show. In today's episode, we are going to talk about dementia and the impact it brings not only to the patient that has dementia, but also to the caregivers. I have today as guest Riza Carlton, a certified dementia practitioner. She's been a physical therapist for 17 years, specializing in geriatric rehabilitation, working with clients diagnosed with dementia, and also educating the patient's family members and caregivers. In 2019, she experienced herself a reversible type of dementia, um, giving her a unique insight and look on having the condition and seeing her loved ones cope with it as well. Through this experience, she authored a book entitled Alzheimer's and Dementia Caregiving Simplified, Effective and Positive Approaches in Caring for Your Loved One. So here is Riza Carlton. Riza, welcome to PT Mill Podcast.
Hi, Johann. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're here, and thank you for your time to share with us your experience and educate us on what is the impact of dementia aside from the patient. This topic is really close to my heart since I've experienced this. I have a relative who has dementia, and being a physical therapist, I was thankful that I understand what dementia is and how to go about it. That kind of made me a little bit equipped in handling it, understanding what my loved one was going through, and really trying to um, navigate with him that experience. He was diagnosed with dementia early on in his adult life. My grandfather, then he had a minor stroke, and that aggravated his dementia. And that was when we started, talking about if that is something that would return to baseline. Is it gonna be staying that way? And that is when my education with my family members and with my grandfather as well and rehabilitation started. So this topic is really like close to my heart because I've experienced that's really something. I guess primary caregivers, should really understand what's going on with their loved ones experiencing dementia. But before we really dive into that, could you give us a background on your physical therapy story? How did you come to become a physical therapist, and what brought you to the profession?
Yes. In high school, I love science and
Mm-hmm.
very fascinated about human body and how God created. It's so fascinating and no one can replicate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I took physical therapy a program in Far Eastern University. And after I graduated, May of 2000, I migrated here in the US, and I've been here in Florida practicing as a physical therapist for almost 20 years now.
Mm-hmm. Right. All right. So, as I mentioned in my intro, you in 2019 you had yourself experience a reversible type of dementia. Could you tell us how that happened and what you experienced?
Yes. My personal story, it started 3 years ago.
Mhm.
I was 41, Johann.
Mhm.
So realizing that, uh, dementia is not for older people,
Mhm.
right? Um, I'm a single mom. I take care of my son, and I gotta do work, take care of my son. Um, the memory loss was worsening, and
Mhm.
I know there's something wrong with me, but I could not identify what's going on.
Mhm.
I was very forgetful. I lost a lot of things that I use every day: my eyeglasses, my debit cards. When I get groceries, go shopping, I could not remember where I placed them. And in a normal brain, we occasionally forget things, but we are able to retrace them and find
Mhm.
them. But with my memory loss, I could not retrack
Mhm.
where I left them, where I put them. It was worsening. I was trying to mask it. I'm a physical therapist. I'm 41 years old. I was so embarrassed,
Mhm.
having these symptoms. And I did not tell anyone. I did not tell my family. And this is very common also with our patients, Johann, that they don't tell family until it's significant and they cannot mask it anymore.
Mhm.
So it affected my daily life, as simple as balancing my checkbooks.
Mhm.
I could not add, I could not balance. Numbers and symbols overwhelm me.
Mhm.
And I tend to withdraw from doing it because it's very overwhelming.
Mhm.
So I will be up 7 in the morning in my PJ. I have my list of things to do, and with the balancing checkbooks, I keep withdrawing from it and not noticing that I was pacing back and forth. The pacing. And come 3 p.m. in the afternoon, I'm still in my PJ, and I have not done my checkbook. I have not done the things that I need to do for the day
Mhm.
because I have the lack of focus. I could not focus.
Mhm.
And it also affected my job. We do a lot of reporting, documentation,
Mhm.
and I would find myself after work. We do our documentation. I find myself just staring at the computer screen, and
Mhm.
my brain was not working.
Mhm.
I'm trying to mask it because I have to perform at work,
Mhm.
and I don't want to lose my job. I'm a
Mhm.
single mom and gotta pay bills. My supervisors were noticing the changes in me, and they tell me, Riza, you're not yourself. Something is going on. But I tell them I'm okay. So I was masking it up to the point that it's, my supervisor had to pull me aside and talk to me
Mhm.
and sat down with me and saying, like, Riza, you gotta tell us what's going on with you.
Mhm.
And that's when I started crying, Johann, like, it's okay to open up. They already noticing it, so I have to tell them. And what I told my supervisor, I'm losing my memory, but I don't know why. I didn't have any idea. So I went on a medical leave, and they told me, take care of yourself. Um, and we want you to be better. So when we take care of patients.
Mhm.
So I have to take care of myself, get well, so I can help others. My primary doctor referred me to a neurologist.
Mhm.
So on my neurology visit, I mentioned this medication that I took for my migraine for 7 years. And as soon as she heard that, she told me, so you're getting dumber, right? And I said, yes, the memory loss. And she stated that that certain medication was actually recently pulled out of the market because of the same complaint that I have. It's causing early dementia for people who are using it long term. So, and I said, dang, like, doc, I don't want to take this. Right. And so she worked with me, and within the 3-4 months, trying different medications, we try the one with less side effects and affecting the memory functioning. So about 4 months, the symptoms cleared. That's why it's called reversible type of dementia. When we identify the causing factor that's causing the dementia symptoms, it's addressed, then the symptoms resolved. And that was my experience.
Wow. That is one, for me, being a physical therapist and really noticing that might have, that maybe was scary. How did you feel? Once you started noticing those changes and realizing that this is not my usual me. How was that? How how did that impact your life?
It was, I'm very sociable.
Uh-huh.
So it went to, and we will see that with our patients also when they struggle carrying an intelligible conversation, they have difficulty finding words. So being sociable and then feeling embarrassed about it, right? Like people will notice, and at that point I became more introvert because I was avoiding conversation. I was avoiding that people would notice. My son lived with me, and he was 8 years old, and he was my witness of my dementia experience. I was missing, medical appointments. He was doing the guitar lessons and soccer games. I was missing those activities, and he get upset. He's a kid, and he kept reminding me, and then I get upset. I get upset, like, why you have to remind me? A kid has to remind me of disappointments. And very humbly, and he was very patient and would tell me, Mom, so you won't forget it. Yeah. And I cannot multitask. I'm being a mom. I gotta be doing, something and then taking care of my son. And I found myself where when he talks to me and I'm doing something, and he would remind me, I always say like, because I could not process what he was saying. The multitasking is a challenge for people with dementia. And so he get upset that I'm ignoring him. It's like, you're always on your phone, you're always on your computer, which we do documentation, and you don't pay attention to me. It was because I could not multitask.
So how did your son take it when you all found out that was dementia and that was what was causing it? How was he able to handle that?
Yes, my relationship with my son is we're very close, and very connected. And we always find ways to find humor on things, and being a Filipino, that's our personality, right? So I made it like light for him, so he will not worry about me. And if you know about the movie Nemo,
Yes.
and he has a friend named Dory.
Yes.
Yes. So he kept telling me, and pick on me, saying, Mommy, you're so Dory. Because I'm forgetful. You know how Dory's character is like, she kept following Nemo, trying to help in that, but
Mm-hmm.
She was so forgetful.
Uh-huh.
So that's why he called me when I was going through the dementia symptoms. You
Mm-hmm.
are so Dory, mommy.
Uh-huh. So with identifying what was causing your dementia, did you go through in rehabilitation uh for it,
No,
or was
no.
it
Yes.
as soon as you changed your medication, then it slowly reversed? Okay.
Um, honestly, there was a fear, like, after the recovery, I
Uh-huh.
had the fear of like, how will I perform at work? Am I
Right.
ready? I mean, even knowing and claiming that I'm healed,
Uh-huh.
there's, in my mind, like, will I be the same person, the same therapist that excel in things and on top of things,
Mm-hmm.
but I think more of I did perform. I went back to work, and that's the beauty and my personal testimony, Johann, as an advocate for Alzheimer's and dementia. I am a living testimony that I went through the early signs of dementia.
Mm-hmm.
So what I experienced was a mild stage of dementia, the
Mm-hmm.
early signs. And I am a living testimony that when we identify that there are early signs, we pay attention, we address it can be prevented, it can be reversed. Because after the recovery, I changed my lifestyle. I was eating healthier because my primary doctor told me, you know, you are a physical therapist also. We are so involved taking care of our patients.
Mm-hmm.
And the last on the list will be myself, taking
Mm-hmm.
care of myself. I was I was overweight. I was having different medical problems. My heart was failing. I was not getting enough sleep. And I appreciate my doctor then. She told me straight, Riza, if you don't take care of yourself, you will die early. Who will take care of your son? And that hit me. So the change of lifestyle, I changed my eating habits. And as a Filipino, we love food, right?
Mm-hmm.
I changed my lifestyle. I did it for my son. And I started exercising also, making time for myself
Mm-hmm.
because I realized that I have to be well. I have to take care of myself before I can help other people.
Right.
Mhm.
And it's good that uh what you had is a reversible type of dementia, and not the other types of dementia that are really progressive. Though there's a lot of studies coming out on managing it, early detection and managing it, coping and stuff like that. So you mentioned earlier um advocating for it. So what was your first steps in uh leading you to advocacy and educating others on the effects of dementia, not just on the person, but also the people around them.
Yes. Um, Based on my personal dementia experience and my clinical practice,
Mm-hmm.
it's more of educating the families and the caregivers to be more open and more aware of the early signs,
Mm-hmm.
because as a physical therapist, they consider those early signs as a normal part of aging, which is not. So, and you will notice, Johann, with our patients that when they are diagnosed with Alzheimer's dementia or other dementia condition, it's already in the moderate to severe stage
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because of not understanding that the early signs are the mild, is the start of the Alzheimer's disease and the dementia. So that's my advocacy, is to educate
Mm-hmm.
to educate caregivers, family members that pay attention to the early signs.
Mm-hmm.
And dementia is not part of the normal aging of the brain, because we know there are people that will die and they are sharp as a bullet. They remember everything, right? So it's not a normal aging process. And that's the one advocacy that I want to promote. And it will really help in the prevention and the progression of the disease.
Mhm. So we're talking about educating caregivers, family members on what dementia is. So what should loved ones or family members, caregivers know regarding the early signs of dementia?
There, this is a typical question from,
Mm,
from the caregivers and family
right.
members.
Yeah.
How will we know
Mm-hmm.
that they're early signs? So, for example, with the forgetfulness, in a normal brain, we occasionally forget things. We forget where we put our car keys, right? But we're able to retrace them.
Mm-hmm.
The memory loss, that is a good sign that it's dementia, is happening frequently. They could not remember, they could not find the things, they misplace, like my experience. And I do home care. So going to the patient's home, you would find their phones in the fridge
Mm-hmm.
in weird places. And then they could not find it. Um, those kind of signs that will trigger that something's not right.
Mm-hmm.
And then another example is I had a patient who goes to the same doctor's office, goes to the same grocery store, driving, right? And this is an early sign. A family member mentioned to me that he's starting to forget where to go, and even finding these familiar places that he's been going for years.
Mm-hmm.
So those are early signs that we have to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like I said, I believe that when we identify it early on, it can be reversed.
Mm-hmm.
It's harder when they get to the moderate stage of the dementia. The learning is decreasing. They're losing the ability, the thinking skills, the reasoning. Then to that point, it's hard to reverse and prevent it.
Mm-hmm. Excuse me. Being forgetful is quite usual for people, right? As you mentioned. And but the difference is for most of us, as you mentioned, we can retrace it. Like if I ask someone, okay, what did you eat for breakfast? Then they can think about, oh, I ate this. And that's normal. But those weird things like leaving your car keys in the fridge, or cell phone in the fridge, or being forgetting things that you usually do without even thinking, like turning off a faucet or turning off an oven. That's something that could be a sign. In terms of emotion, were there, in your personal experience, were there any early signs in changes in your emotions or behavior aside from memory?
Yes, I notice myself. I easily get frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a very patient person.
Mm-hmm.
So even my family were noticing I I easily get upset, frustrated,
Mm-hmm.
but now looking back, it's my thinking skills.
Mm-hmm.
It gets so frustrating, and we can relate to our patients
Mm-hmm.
when they cannot express their needs. They
Right.
cannot voice their needs, or finding the words how to say things,
Mm-hmm.
forgetting things. It it's very frustrating. That's why it was a very humbling experience for me, being at a younger age, 41. I had to go through it. It's um Before I was diagnosed with the dementia symptoms, I was doing the patient visits, and one patient asked me, conversation, right? When we do the therapy visit, like, Riza, so how was your weekend? That was the question. So I would say probably the day was like Tuesday or Wednesday. Johann, I could not retrieve in my brain what I did that weekend. And that was just like 2, 3 days ago.
Wow.
And I was like thinking, and there was a long pause. And I don't want to like look embarrassed or whatever. All I said was, it was good. Because I could not remember, like, tell her, oh, we went out to eat, or the details.
Right.
Yeah, I could not remember. And all I told her was, it was good. And then I moved on to a different conversation.
But in yourself, you wanted to say something. You really wanted to tell her what you did for that weekend. You just can't remember it.
My brain was not working.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because for some people, I mean, for people who are not really like open for small talk, that is a normal response. My weekend is okay. But you're noticing that you wanted to say something, but it just doesn't come out.
Yes, yes.
It's coming
And
out.
no kidding, silently, like in my brain, like, what did I do? What did I do? Like, come on, come on. Like, I was thinking,
Uh-huh.
but
Wow.
yep. So my memory center, was not telling me the details and the events. So
Mm-hmm.
I could not say anything. And we can relate to our patients with Alzheimer's and dementia,
Mm-hmm.
because the changes happen in the brain, the thinking skills, the reasoning. So most of the time we talk to them and they just stare.
Uh-huh.
And family member will tell me, like, he's ignoring me or they're being difficult.
Mm-hmm.
It's just they heard the word,
Uh-huh.
right? But it's not processing in the brain, so they could not reply what was said. It didn't, like my experience, I could not remember. So they end up not saying anything and just staring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
And that can be misconstrued as just being aloof or elusive if they're not really trying to see really what's going on. That they might think that, oh, probably he's not in the mood, and that's then they brush it off. So what are some of the um common challenges that caregivers encounter with dealing with their loved ones with dementia, in any in any stage of dementia?
yes, based on like working with the patients
Mm-hmm.
and coaching the family
Mm-hmm.
and the caregivers, is really understanding that the changes are actually happening in the brain. With Alzheimer's disease,
Mm-hmm.
what happens is there's a global shrinking of the brain cells.
Mm-hmm.
So when that's happening, they are losing the ability, the thinking skills, safety judgment, the reasoning, and and we try to understand that they're taking care of their loved one. So most of the time they take it personal,
That's
because
true.
they know mom or dad before the dementia, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if mom or dad was like more patient, sociable, bubbly, funny, and then there's a behavioral change of like he's always upset, he's
Mm-hmm.
yelling, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's argumentative, is
Right.
because of the changes in the brain itself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my education with the families and the caregivers. It's beyond their control.
Mm-hmm.
When that's happening, the behavioral changes, and they worsen over time.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they have to learn how to approach it, effectively, and positive approaches.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Right. It's I guess it's really hard to see and accept someone, your loved one, who you see every day
Mm-hmm.
going through that, and be like that when there are times during the day that they seem normal.
Mm-hmm.
See that okay, probably it's not dementia, or it's not getting worse. Probably he's getting better because uh like today he's answering perfectly. He makes sense. But in truth, there are days that they're good, there are days that they're bad. There are times that they're best, they're coherent. There are times during the day that they're not. And sometimes it's that thing that's very difficult for loved ones to accept, that it may not go away. It may not get better. It
Yes.
may even get worse
Yes.
sooner than later. So as you know, as soon as they're able to learn and accept that, then that's when the proper approach and healing can start, right?
I agree with you, Johan. It's the challenge being a physical therapist and a clinician.
Mm-hmm.
For us, is the denial from the family member.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I'm teaching this and educating the families and caregivers when I do home care visits,
Mm-hmm.
that it's a loss of a family member, right? Physically, they're here, but they're losing their awareness,
Mm-hmm.
and that comes where they get, family member get angry why this is happening to their loved one.
Mm-hmm.
Denial is real, and we encounter this with the families and caregivers,
Mm-hmm.
the denial. And for me as a clinician, I try to understand them,
Mm-hmm.
that it's their loved one that's going through this difficult time. I had a patient in a memory care unit in an assisted living facility, and the son was in denial, accepting that his mom was going through the Alzheimer's disease stage, and
Mm-hmm.
she's worsening, and I could feel the love. It was out of love when he gets upset. But I, as a clinician, I don't sugarcoat it. I tell him with my evaluation, she was in the more moderate stage of dementia, and he was insisting to the staff that the physical therapist has to train my mom how to use a walker. I mean, it's in the later stage. It's kind of late to teach her, and you can agree with me that when they get to that point, they're not teachable.
Mm-hmm.
You will present them the walker, they will forget it, and they will just keep pacing and wandering, and that's the challenge in dealing with family and loved ones that have the hard time accepting
Mm-hmm.
that there is a point, a stage in the Alzheimer's disease and dementia that they could not learn
Mm-hmm.
because it's too much to process. That's why I teach and I encourage that assistive devices like cane walkers uh, has to be introduced in the early stage. So they use it every day. It becomes part of them. So even when the disease is progressing, they remember.
Mm-hmm.
They remember and they take it. But in a later stage, and you present a new device, yeah, it's and I told the family, like, she's we it's not a realistic goal. And some get upset and call my agency. I don't like this physical therapist.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing. You have to present it in the honest and in a realistic way. I'm not saying like your loved one is dying,
Mhm.
but we as a clinician, knowing that this is how the brain function now,
Mhm.
how much they can learn, you know, that's we are the advocate. We gotta tell them,
Right.
and we cannot say that they'll get better if they're not. So.
Mhm. Yeah. My first patient with dementia was in home health as well. It finding someone in rehab with dementia is rare in the Philippines, right? Because um, we don't usually, well, Filipinos don't usually send their uh their loved ones for rehab
Mhm.
if if their loved ones has dementia. But my first encounter was in home health as well, the and the patient was at her late stage of dementia. She's nonverbal.
Mhm.
She follows limited instructions.
Mm.
Um, and she shows emotions. Sometimes she's stubborn.
Mm.
So my role there back then was I wasn't really sure what to do because that was my first encounter with a patient with dementia. Then realizing what the caregivers, the family members were doing, trying to see what they were doing in terms of bed mobility, transfers, and stuff like that. Then I learned that my role there as a physical therapist in that stage of dementia was to really educate them on what could be expected later on. So they know they're well equipped with the machines that they needed. They have Hoyer lifts. They have transfer machines. So they're well taken care of. I mean, it's just um talking to them on what they will be expecting that would happen, and then later on I were able to observe that changes in the patient, that then the patient began to not want to eat anymore, because as we know, as they progress, their sense of appetite would also go away. They would not have any sense of being hungry or thirsty. So
Mhm.
being able to educate the family members that you have to create a routine already to um give her food and drink regularly, because she's not gonna ask for it anymore. She's gonna forget to. So um glad fortunately those family members were already accepting. They already know what's going to happen, and they just needed some guidance on how to approach that, and how to make it so that it's not so much of a burden for them, that try to encourage the patient to stand up from time to time, so that the patient doesn't lose any muscle mass
Right.
more than that she's supposed to or needs to. you know um Playing some music so that her mood and behavior wouldn't be as as fearful or scared or as troubled, just making the patient happy, content, and as well taken care of. Sometimes that's education is really a big part
Mhm.
for us as physical therapists in handling patients and caregivers, and with in terms of dementia management.
Yes, and that's a good point, Johan, because um, in my physical therapy visit with Alzheimer's and dementia,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have I don't have therapeutic exercises 10 reps,
Yeah.
right? Because they could not follow instructions.
They could not, yeah.
Yeah, you have to be creative
Mm-hmm.
and do things that are functional.
Mm-hmm. And you're
Yeah.
the new person, as a new person for a person with dementia, you're nothing to them. Why would they follow you if they don't know you, right?
Yes.
So it's the normal approach to a patient with dementia wouldn't work. So that's
Yep.
where we engage the family members. It's really the family members that we try to treat to
And
treat
yeah,
the patient.
yes, they do well with familiar faces,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a point um where they forget, or the ability to recognize familiar faces is also diminished. So we will have patients that, the family member that's taking care of them every day, they remember. And
Yes.
then here a friend, a longtime friend, or another family member visiting, and they would say, "Mom, do you remember so and so?" And she would say like, "No."
Mm-hmm.
Because that's why it's so important, as you mentioned also, the structured routine for them.
Mm-hmm.
Because when it's structured, they do the same thing every day, they are more to participate and
Mm-hmm.
get involved with doing showers, changing clothes,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a routine, and
Uh-huh.
their familiarity really is a good approach for our patients with Alzheimer's and dementia.
Mm-hmm. Gone would be the active educating for the patient, but just establishing that step by step process for the day, then that would create a sense of familiarity to that routine. Now, they don't have to think about it, but they feel that that's going to happen next.
Yes, I encourage them with a therapy visit, get them involved doing light household chores. So I had a patient, and he likes to fold clothes.
Mm-hmm.
And the daughter is very supportive, she understands.
Mm-hmm.
And what she does is she keeps a pile of clothes on his bed, and when he's starting to like pacing or wandering around, would say, "Dad, you want to do the I just did the laundry, can you fold the clothes?"
Mm-hmm.
It's redirecting,
Mm-hmm.
right, into a physical activity. And he will fold the clothes,
Mm-hmm.
put them away,
Uh-huh.
and then the daughter will unfold them again. And
Uh-huh.
because he would not remember what he did like 10-20 minutes
Mm-hmm.
ago.
Right.
So, and that's keeping them active. I encourage the family members and the caregivers that you gotta keep them moving, especially walking around, because we have patients that they are not weak. It's not the weakness, it's not the strength that's the issue. It's forgetting how to walk,
Right.
right? And you will see them, they're sitting in the chair like, "Mr. So and so, get up, stand up." And they're just looking at you because they can't remember the
How to do
sequencing
it.
and how to
Right.
start an activity.
Mm-hmm.
So it's in the brain, not the physical strength, not weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good education also. You gotta keep them moving. Don't do everything for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if more like assisting and helping,
Mm-hmm.
and they do the task, may it be shower, changing clothes,
Mm-hmm.
so they can help, because the more that you do it for them, they will lose that ability, and caregiver will end up doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Right. Like what you said about the weakness part, that they forget about doing stuff, but they know how to do it. I mean, in their brain, deep inside there, they know how to do it, but once you tell them to do it, their processing doesn't work. I had that patient that the normal, stand up, let's walk, doesn't work. But once the music starts, it triggers something in her that she starts to stand up and walk and strut, because she loved to dance when she was younger. So tr- that that's where your knowledge of the patient really comes in. As a family member, as a caregiver, what does the patient like to do, and
Right.
try to really um exploit that. If the patient loves music, then
Mm-hmm.
make him or her stand up and dance, right? And listen to that music and stuff like that. So something automatic. You don't need to, tell the patient, because the more instruction, the more you ask the patient, the more processing is required, and the more that
Mm-hmm.
they don't follow. Especially in the moderate and the later stage of dementia.
What
Um.
That's such a good point, Johan, because in part of my teaching, because I do community service and I teach to the communities, and one of my presentation is about understanding the brain with dementia. The executive part of the brain, the frontal lobe, the temporal lobe, we learned that in physical therapy school, right? And they are responsible for higher level thinking skills.
Mm-hmm.
That's problem solving, decision making, and safety judgment. Now the limbic system is the memory and emotion centers of the brain,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the brain that is spared
Mm-hmm.
in the loved one with Alzheimer's and dementia. That's why you mentioned about music therapy is good,
Mm-hmm.
because we're stimulating that emotion brain,
Mm-hmm.
and taking them. So if they're frustrated, they're agitated. I have an example, like working in a memory care unit in an assisted living facility. You know how they're in a jerry chair or wheelchair, non-verbal, no kidding you how many times my hair was pulled and grabbed.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then holding me tight, because those are the reflexes, right? And I teach the staff, you don't yank your hand, because the more that they will grip and hold. And that's my teaching with them is use music therapy or touch therapy. So when they're grabbing you, do a gentle stroke. And I'm not a singer, but I love to sing. I would
Mm-hmm.
hum a song with them, because I'm stimulating the limbic system,
Mm-hmm.
and that will make them relax and let go. So
Mm-hmm.
staff are seeing it. It's working. The later stage of dementia with the patients in a wheelchair, it's a struggle to transfer them from the wheelchair to bedtime,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And music therapy, touch are very effective, because you're building trust. Like you
Right.
said, if they don't know you, I mean, the developmental age comparison of the brain, moderate stage of dementia, they think like toddlers. If
Mm-hmm.
I don't know you, you're not familiar, I don't trust you,
Exactly.
right? And there's fear, like, who is this person? So, providing the positive approaches using touch therapy, music, stimulating that emotion brain,
Mm-hmm.
they tend to loosen up and
Mm-hmm.
build up that trust.
True. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It really have to the caregivers really need to make an effort to be somewhat of a safe space for for the patient. The patient feels what you feel. If they feel that you're somewhat of a threat, that you're upset,
Mm-hmm.
then
Mm-hmm.
they'll be upset and they'll be fearful and guarded. So, more of my approach back then, and even with my grandfather when she experienced that, is shower him with care and trying to bring back memories of happy times when we were you know back when we were younger, when she was younger and when I was younger, to elicit that, oh, I am your grandson, I am this, we did this, we were close, so that we can build some trust. He would listen to me, he would follow my instructions. But if introducing a caregiver that doesn't really exude an effort to care, then the patient would really sense that it's going to be hard for a caregiver to approach a patient with dementia if the care isn't really there and it's not authentic. And if you're really treating the patient as just a person and not someone with a condition, it's going to be difficult for both of you. Yeah, we
That's
experienced that
right.
because we're trying to get an outside caregiver, and that supposed caregiver wasn't really trying to care. So
Mhm.
my grandfather sensed that, and he wasn't really trusting. So it didn't work out. So care, that emotional part of caring is really important.
It's you're right, Johan, because when it goes to the later stage of the dementia, it's actually focusing on their emotions, their feelings,
Hmm.
not the facts, because
Hmm.
you have to live in their reality, in their
Exactly.
dementia world, to
Hmm.
understand them.
Hmm.
So, and thank you for sharing that, because there is a quote that I share to, to the loved ones, the staff, caregivers, and it says, um, "I may not remember your name or what you did to help me, but I remember how you made me feel."
Mm.
Right?
That's
Like
powerful.
yes, they respond well with gentle touch, calm voice. That's why it's so important, that because they lose the peripheral vision,
Hmm.
the tunneling vision is worsening as the dementia progresses. So it's so important. For example, like in an assisted living facility, memory care unit, like I will tell them, okay, show me how you transfer the patient, right?
Hmm.
No instruction, Johan. They just grab them, right? They
Hmm.
grab them by the waist and try to stand them up. And what the patient would do, they will stiffen up
Resist.
and resist, because there's no eye contact. You didn't introduce yourself. You didn't tell them what you are doing,
Hmm.
right? And that's so important, so they can follow instructions.
Hmm. Right. It- There's, I like what you said, that with patients with dementia, they have their own reality.
Mhm.
They have their own. It can. That's why they're confused. They're seeing something, and it doesn't coincide with what we're seeing and what we're really uh getting from them. So there's disconnect. They're confused. We're confused, and that adds to the frustration. So
Yeah.
we mentioned earlier a lot of the challenges and sometimes mistakes that caregivers do in taking care of their patients with their loved ones with dementia. First one was not accepting early. That's really hard. Being in denial, doing everything for the patient, not showing care or trust, and not introducing yourself. And what are other common mistakes that caregivers do, intentionally or
the
not, and when they're taking care of their loved ones?
the common comments that I get from the family and caregivers, um, the behavioral changes when they become combative,
Mm-hmm.
they're argumentative, they take
Uh,
it personally. They're
uh-huh.
just being difficult,
That's yes.
right? They're being difficult. They're trying to make my life harder,
Mm-hmm.
not understanding that, it's like I mentioned, it's beyond their control.
Mm-hmm.
Also arguing with a loved one.
Right.
And I tell them jokingly, I would say, you will not win.
Exactly.
You
Exactly.
will not win. You have to um get into their world, like saying, if for example mom or dad say that you are you're kind of rude, you offended me, you hurt my feelings,
Mm-hmm.
right? Don't reason out like saying, you know, I didn't say this, I wasn't meaning that. So what I coach them is get into their reality and understand that they were hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And then just say, Mom, I'm so sorry if I offended you. I hurt you. You know, and they calm down. Because if
Mm-hmm.
you argue, they get more agitated, they get more confused.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's hard. Yeah, that's a common, really mistake, and as well, it's coming from frustration and as well in taking care of that loved one, knowing that I'm taking care of you, and you're doing still doing this to me. But we sometimes forget that it's the disease. It's the disease
Right.
as that.
Right.
So with this mistakes, what can caregivers do to their loved ones to be able to take care of them better? We mentioned that, you know, denial is, they have to really accept it early, learn about it. In we mentioned earlier as well that we need to promote a sense of purpose and activity for the patient, and not do everything for them, right? Like when your example was like folding clothes, that gave them a sense of purpose and activity to distract them, and showing care for them, eliciting that emotional, familiarity, and not taking things personally. But
Mm-hmm.
that's I think the most difficult part, because you're giving all yourself. You're going to be the caregiver of your loved one, and it's really
Mm-hmm.
difficult. And arguing, as you mentioned, don't argue. What are other tips or advice can you give caregivers to take care of their loved ones better?
Yes, my recommendations will be, it's so important to understand what are the changes that are actually happening in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So, for an example, like the occipital lobe of the brain is the vision center of the brain. It
Mm-hmm.
gets to the point where they have trouble identifying familiar faces, familiar objects. They
Mm-hmm.
will mistaken the cell phone as a remote control,
Right.
right? And I had one patient, Johann, in an assisted living facility. Every time he looked at himself in the mirror, he was screaming and was like fearful,
So,
right?
he
So,
doesn't recognize himself.
huh?
He didn't recognize himself.
That's right. So when we had that the clinical team meeting, like what's going on with Mr. So and what is registered in his brain, and what he could remember was when he was 30 years old. And then
Mm-hmm.
looking at the mirror, he was like 70 years later. Who is this guy?
Mm-hmm.
And he gets scared. It was a threat for him. It was a threat. So
Mm-hmm.
we covered the mirror so he could not see himself. Those are the approaches. Really, when family member and loved one understand that these behavioral changes are actually a change in the brain itself, it's they can embrace the changes. And the other thing is knowing what is the stage of dementia of your loved one. And with my teaching, I make it very simple. Even with clinicians, there are dementia leveling that are 6 levels, 7 levels.
Levels.
Yep. So I made it simple, 3 levels: mild, moderate, and severe. So even the family members and caregivers without medical background can understand it. It's very important to know what is the level of the stage of dementia of the loved one, because every level have their own positive effective approaches. Because
Mhm.
as a physical therapist, you will agree with me, it's very personalized,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
Our clinical approach with our patient with mild stage of dementia will be very different from our patients who are in the moderate and severe stage.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Mhm.
Yeah, that is, I would agree. I agree 100% that it's really trying to understand what's going on, and that would stem out all your, your questions, then finding the answers to your, questions to that. Um, what can you say about respite for caregivers? Because
Mhm.
caregiver burden is real, and um, as much as we want to take care of our loved ones, there would come a point that
Mhm.
it can be tiring. And
Mhm.
as much as we don't, as much as we want to take care of our loved ones, we don't want to reach that point that you become hateful.
Or it's the caregiver burnout is real.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 So
Because the
yeah.
role itself is very challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Because as a clinician, I do home care. I
Mm-hmm.
go to the patient's home and I work with them for an hour,
Mm-hmm.
and after working with them, it can be exhausting. So imagine the family members, caregivers caring for them 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
And for the respite care, I educate them. If you want to take a month vacation, a
Mm-hmm.
week vacation,
Mm-hmm.
there are retirement communities that provide and are open for clients that would stay for a week, a
Mm-hmm.
month, 3 months. I will have patients that they are the primary caregiver of the spouse with Alzheimer's disease and dementia. And she was scheduled to have a hip surgery. And like,
Oh,
Riza, what will I do? Right? Like,
wow.
who will take care of
Mm-hmm.
of my partner?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where respite care comes handy. The loved one can stay in a facility with respite care for a month, 2 months, 3 months during her recovery.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing with as a clinician, we recommend the appropriate home placement for them.
Right.
It can be a memory care unit, a skilled nursing facility.
Mm-hmm.
That's based on the level of their dementia symptoms. So if they start to wonder,
Mm-hmm.
they're exit seekers, then a locked-in unit is more appropriate for them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. It's okay to feel tired. It's
Yeah.
okay to have a vacation. You're taking care of your loved one. It's okay. You don't have to feel guilty about taking a
Yeah.
break.
Yep.
Yeah,
The
you don't want
guilt
to.
feeling is, I mean, they experience it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but you and I tell them and I educate them, you are the lifesaver of your loved one. You take care of them. So it's like in an airplane is crashing. We have to put our own oxygen, right? Before we help others.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing I tell them. You got to be healthy. You got to take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be healthy physically, emotionally, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it can be mentally exhausting taking
Right.
care of them.
Mm-hmm.
So they deserve that break. And I tell them, you know, go out and have lunch with your friends, and get a break for like a day or 2 days and have
Mm-hmm.
other family member take care of them because it's very important.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Mhm.
Caregiver burden, then you feel that burden, you feel that burnout. Then later on, if you still is there and you're not taking a break, then you have compassion fatigue and not really care anymore, and you don't want to reach that point.
And there's so much family members and caregivers that I work with them in a home care setting where um they live like by the loved one's home. They live together. I
Mm,
mean, when they're burned out, they easily get upset, they get angry. And then, with their strategies and approaching the challenging behaviors of the loved ones, then they're not being a help
mm,
because they're not in their restful mind, even physically and emotionally.
right.
So yeah, I'm a big advocate that they have to take breaks and me time, I call
Yeah,
it. And
that's
I
true.
I discuss that in my book also. I have a chapter about caregiver burnout,
Mm,
and I discuss about getting a backup,
mm,
so you can take a weekend off, and then also the home placement respite care
mm,
when it gets so much for you to take care of mom or dad.
mm,
It's okay that they will be in a safer place,
mm.
like a memory care unit or
Mm.
assisted living facility that medical professionals will monitor them 24/7.
Right. Talking about your book, uh, talk to us a little bit about your book and where can we find it?
Yes, sir. Um, After I recover from the dementia symptoms, I I'm not a writer, and we're from the Philippines, right? I love science, I love math, I can do numbers all day, but writing compositions like we did in high school, right? Like is not my thing. But having the strong faith in God, I know that the words I started writing and combining my personal dementia experience, my clinical experience. And for about 6 months, I finished the book.
Wow.
And I really made it like very concise, very simple. And most of it is a layman's word because I want to reach the mass, where they can understand the topics. So I have a chapter about journaling the dementia symptoms for the family member and the loved one when they're getting concerned about the forgetfulness, jotting it down, what are the important things to write down. So on the next doctor's appointment with the loved one, then they can share these early signs,
Mhm.
how the doctors diagnose Alzheimer's disease and dementia, also the stages of the dementia. So when I do the presentation and at the end of the discussion about the stages of the dementia, my my attenders can identify, like I would ask them, so presenting this, what is your loved one's level or the stage of dementia?
Mhm.
And they always get it because
Mhm.
with the symptoms that presented, very simple. That's why it's Alzheimer's and dementia caregiving simplified.
Mhm.
Back to basics, make it simple, and it's more of effective positive approaches, and we got to take care of them with gentleness and calmness.
Mhm.
It's very important. They respond well with calm voice and those techniques,
Mhm.
because yelling and being upset make them more agitated and confused.
Right.
So my book is available in Amazon.
Mhm. All right. So yeah, it's available in Amazon. Go get that. Alzheimer's and Dementia Caregiving: Simplified, Effective, and Positive Approaches in Caring for Your Loved One. All right. So thank you again, Riza, for um, being in the show and sharing with us uh, your experience, having lived that part of your life with dementia, and now advocating and empowering caregivers on taking care of their loved ones with dementia. Before I finish my conversation with you, I usually ask my last questions. I have my last bites. I didn't tell you this, so this would be candid answers to my questions. So, my first last bite, so to speak, is it's not related to our conversation, or but it's something about you and what comes to your mind. All right, first is, what's your recipe for success?
Do your best
Mm-hmm.
and do it with passion.
All right, love that. Your
Mhm.
best and with passion. All right. Second, we were talking about caregivers. How can we, as physical therapists, improve our approaches in patient care?
Like any other medical conditions, not all clinicians are equipped, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like my specialty is geriatrics,
Mm-hmm.
and you put me in an outpatient clinic, I don't know what to do with the ortho patients. So it really is embracing that caring for patients with Alzheimer's disease and dementia takes a lot of patience, really patience, and being able to read emotions.
Mm-hmm.
It's very important. Um, and in the early part of my physical therapy practice, and we hear this, right? And they will say, or we say, like, oh, the patient got Alzheimer's disease and dementia. They will not learn anymore. They're far too gone. You heard that too, right? And I felt, looking back, I felt guilty, Johann, that I was discharging patients too soon, right? And documenting patient uncooperative, unable to follow instructions, or, I mean, that is, now that I did so much research, experiencing it myself, I'm like, that's not fair with them, right? I mean, you do reps, leg exercises, they can't follow 10
That's
reps,
true. Yeah.
and for, not having that knowledge and expertise, like, oh, they plateau, right? Or it's not beneficial anymore for them to have physical therapy, when in truly there's specific approaches, more like functions, right? Functional mobility, walking them around. I walk them around the garden, or I tell them, can you show me what you have in the kitchen, or or what's in the fridge, and you make them walk. And Medicare and health insurances acknowledge that it's a very creative, functional activity that you're doing with them.
Right.
So,
And
and that's my goal also, to reach out to clinicians, and the more of us that are educated with Alzheimer's and dementia, the more powerful we get in taking care of them.
And education of the caregiver is also part of your care plan. It's also billable, and that's the most important thing, I feel, for dementia management. All right, my last bite is, what are the three ingredients that you carry around with you? It can be a verse, a quote, a characteristic, a virtue. Three ingredients that carry with you each and every day of your life that you feel that are essential. In short, what are the three ingredients that make up Riza Carlton?
Wow. All right. I would say, when I wake up in the morning, there's no room for grouchiness or being sour. And that keeps me in a positive mode. Like, I'm just a happy, bubbly person, and as soon as I get up, it's that's mindset is very important. Yeah, and knowing that what's ahead, you gotta keep a positive spirit. I'm a very patient person. I always look at things, stresses of life, problem presented, or whatever, big or small. I approach it as, when there's a problem, there's a solution. You just have to figure it out.
Right.
And the most important thing is my faith in God. And that always keep me grounded. Grounded. I'm knowing that everything that I have, belongs to Him, and without Him, I am nothing. Right? I mean, my life, my breath is from Him. Clothes that I wear and everything around me, belongs to God. So there's really nothing I can boast. It's all Him, and it applies to everyone. Whatever we have is a blessing from God. So we have to use it in the right way and be a blessing to others.
I like that. Proper mindset is wake up in the morning, patience when there are problems, there are solutions. As to your faith in God. I like that. As Filipinos, before we like to give out our guests when we have a party or gathering, we want to give our guests some to go food, right? Some takeaways, our pabaon for them. We don't leave them empty handed going home. So as our closing, as a takeaway for our audience today, something that they could bring in their practice, come Monday, what is that one thing that you want them to take away from our whole conversation today?
It's whatever we face in life, it's all in God's hands, right? It is really up to us how to handle any situation.
Mhm.
And for me it's like stay awesome, stay positive. I mean, you cannot control how people react, how they treat you, how they treat others. But for me, my goal is to present myself that I can be a blessing. It's more of a positive energy. And because if you see me grumpy and upset, you really pushed my button. That's so my son, he's 12 years old now, Johann. So when I say his the tone of the voice, with the Filipinos and with mama, he knows like when mommy calls me this way, I gotta listen and do it. Yeah, because he knows I'm patient, and when I get to that point, she is serious. Don't mess around.
Mhm. Gotcha. All right, so Riza, thank you again for coming on the show and like sharing everything, your experience and your advocacy and empowering our caregivers and taking care of uh, patients with dementia. Everyone watching, listening to us, grab her book. It's Alzheimer's and Dementia Caregiving Simplified, available in Amazon, paperback and Kindle, or paperback
No,
only.
it's a paperback
Mhm. Okay.
copy. I'm working on the ebook. I
Uh-huh.
am not a technical savvy person, so actually getting my book out is like
uh,
a it's
the
a
first
win
step.
for me, right?
Win,
It's
all
a
right.
win.
That's true.
It's
All right.
not perfect, but it's readable. So
Yeah, it would be a good read for anyone who's taking care or treating someone with dementia. So thank you everyone who's watching and listening. Catch the next episode of PT Meal Podcast. Listen to the past podcast as well. Enjoy the learnings, the insights, and the information that the podcast is bringing. Until next time, thank you everyone's listening. Bye bye.